anarchy, witchcraft, murder. Yeah, seems like good summer reading. So, it's time for my June reading wrap-up. I finished 4 books this month, and I also have some films and TV and music to chat a little bit about towards the end as well. I would normally have some more books to chat about, but my bedtime reading has been taken up by a very long book that I actually started towards the end of May and only just finished at the beginning of July. So, yeah, that kind of reduced the number of finished books to talk about this month. Spoiler alert, it's The Odyssey. It's been a pretty good month, generally speaking. I did have some disruptions to my usual routine in the first week of the month, and then the heat wave towards the end of the month kind of sapped my energy a bit, and I had some little flare-ups of anxiety, but I have to say my friends in the Guin reading group were really great and really kind of supportive and understanding about all of that. So, I'd just like to thank everyone in that group for being absolutely wonderful. And towards the end of June, I was delighted to post the second Poetry Party video, and especially pleased that I managed to get it all finished and posted in the original time frame I was aiming for. So, yeah, well done me, I guess, but also especially well done to all of the people who provided wonderful poems and read them so beautifully in the Poetry Party. If you haven't already gone and watched that video, then I would urge you to go and check it out. Even if you think you're not a fan of poetry, I do think that hearing it read aloud and hearing such a wonderful variety of tones and styles and subjects can really bring poetry to life. So, yeah, even if you're not sure about poetry, I would urge you to go and check it out, because it might just win you over. But anyway, I've got 4 books to chat about, plus films and music, so let's get on with it, shall we? My first read in June was The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is the 6th in the Hainish series, which I've been reading through in order in a group run by Gareth from Books, Songs and Other Magic, and it was originally published in 1974. And now that I've finally read this copy that I borrowed from my friend John, I can return it to him after a decade. Sorry, John. The Dispossessed follows a scientist called Shevek, and the story is set on 2 different worlds during 2 different times in Shevek's life. These are 2 worlds in the Setian system. One is the planet Uras, and the other is its moon, Anares. And Uras has a capitalist system much like our own world right now, while Anares is a settlement run on anarchist lines. The 2 places pretty much stay completely separate. Shevek makes the controversial decision to travel to Uras. The people of Anares are deeply suspicious of Uras, and as I say, the 2 worlds stay pretty much completely separate. So all that Anares really knows of Uras is that that's where their ancestors came from, where they were kind of banished from, and yeah, most people on Anares don't really relish the thought of going to Uras, even though it is their ancestral home. However, Shevek has made some huge scientific discoveries and advancements that the people of Anares kind of aren't interested in. So his only real option is to travel to Uras and try and share the idea there. But in true anarchist style, he doesn't really want to share it with just Uras. He wants to share it with all the planets in the League of All Worlds. But in this tale of two planets, it's also a tale of two times, because intertwined and alternating with those chapters about Shevek's travels to Uras and what he finds there, there are also chapters about his past, his upbringing, and what eventually leads him to make the decision to travel to Uras. So it's very apt that Shevek's discovery or advancement is the theory of simultaneity, the idea that everything exists at once and not in sequence. So this book is also kind of told all at once rather than in sequence. So in a way, it's somewhat reminiscent of The Left Hand of Darkness in that it is a tale of two halves, but in this instance, the two halves are woven together in alternating chapters rather than being the first half and then the second. I really enjoyed how that worked, and it was really satisfying the way that the end of the early section, as it were, joins up with the beginning of the later section, if that makes any sense. And thematically, it is about separate things joining together, two worlds and the link between them, and the way that those worlds will kind of become linked with the League. So, you know, again, Le Guin does this thing that she also did in Left Hand of Darkness, where the way the story is told echoes and strengthens the themes and the ideas of it. It's really incredibly well done. I've actually DNF'd this book once before. I tried it a couple of years ago and I just couldn't get into it. But I'm really glad that the Le Guin reading group has suitably primed me to appreciate this book, because now that I have actually read the whole thing, I'm really impressed. I think it's great. And I'm not alone in that, because this is one of the few books, I think, that has won all three of the major sci-fi and fantasy awards, the Hugo, the Nebula, and the Locus. So, yeah, I think it deserves them. That said, I do think that I need to reread it to appreciate it better. I found that, you know, rereading Left Hand of Darkness really deepened my understanding and appreciation of it. And I think that, by contrast, because this was my first reading of The Dispossessed, I'm only just starting to appreciate it. That's an exciting thing in itself. I look forward to rereading it and getting to know it better, getting to appreciate it better, hopefully getting to love it better. But yeah, I do feel like I haven't fully got to grips with it yet. But, you know, as an introduction, as a first read, I did think it was fantastic. My next read was a reread, and that was A Hatful of Sky by Terry Pratchett. This is from 2004. It's the 32nd Discworld book, and also the second in the Tiffany Aching sub-series, preceded by The We Free Men. This was something that I was due to read it anyway as part of my Discworld rereading project, but this was also something that I picked up this month for Joy Reading July in memory of Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. The Tiffany Aching books are aimed at younger readers, and they follow a trainee witch called Tiffany. In this second book, she is now 11 years old, and she is starting her apprenticeship with Miss Level, a very strange witch who has two bodies. She could be mistaken for twins, but she is in fact one person inhabiting two identical bodies. Tiffany is starting to come into her witchy powers, and that attracts the attention of this invisible creature called a hiver, which is a kind of invisible hive mind that can possess people and kind of take over them. It gives them fearsome power and completely removes all their moral scruples. It's said that a hiver can't be killed. It will possess a person's body, use them for powerful means, leave their body dead, and go on with the ghost of that person's personality, their soul, basically, now as part of the hive. And so Tiffany is in grave danger when she does indeed get possessed by the hiver. Luckily, she does have some powerful people on her side too. There's the Feagles, the Nakmuk aka the Wee Free Men, who are basically Scottish-coded, very violent, drunken Smurfs, if you will. Imagine Smurfs crossed with Braveheart. And she also has help from her new mentor, Granny Weatherwax, a powerful witch who readers of the Discworld will be familiar with from earlier books. I'm a huge fan of Terry Pratchett and Discworld, as anyone who's seen pretty much any of my videos before will already know. And Tiffany Aching is one of my favourite strands of the Discworld books, so it was really wonderful to revisit this book. It's a beautiful coming-of-age story. I suppose the whole series is a kind of extended coming-of-age series, as Tiffany gets slightly older with each entry in the series. So this is all about Tiffany learning what witchcraft really is, learning about using her second guesses and her third thoughts. And it's also about learning that a key part of witchcraft is learning not to use magic. That's a very similar theme to Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea books, and I really, really love Earthsea. So, I love that that's also part of Terry Pratchett's world. It's about not needlessly using powerful magic when sometimes what's really needed is just helping people. And Tiffany has to learn that helping people can be a messy job, and sometimes people won't thank you for it, but it still needs to be done. She has to learn that there's no way that things should be. There's simply the way things are, and the question of what she personally is going to do about it. It's a really interesting and, I think, thought-provoking theme, especially for younger readers. But, I mean, even for me, as a 40-year-old, I still get a lot out of it. When Tiffany is possessed by the hiver, she does some pretty horrible things and says some very mean things as well. And afterwards, she fears that means she is a bad person. The hiver didn't force her to do those things. It just bypassed her moral code and enabled her to do these things that that her worst impulses always wanted to do. And Granny Weatherwax assures Tiffany that basically everyone has terrible, dark, horrible impulses. We all think awful things. And it's not the thinking about them that makes us bad. It's what we do with those thoughts when we have them. Do we go ahead and do the horrible thing, or do we stop ourselves and think again and think about what the consequences would be? So I thought that was also a really wonderful theme, and again, quite reassuring even when you read it as an adult. So yeah, I really, really loved revisiting this book. It was perfect for joy reading June. And also, I'll just say that I've got like all of these hardback editions of the Discworld books, and this cover might be my favourite one so far. Ooh, shiny. My next read this month was a bedtime ebook, and that was Dumb Witness by Agatha Christie. This is the 14th Poirot novel, not counting short story collections, etc., and it was originally published in 1937. I particularly wanted to read some Agatha Christie for Joy Reading June because I know that Alice was a huge fan of Agatha Christie, and so am I. Dumb Witness is about an elderly spinster called Emily Arundel. She has no children, although she has a beloved dog called Bob, and she has several adult nieces and nephews. She has a large inheritance, but she refuses to give any money to her nieces and nephews before she passes away. And her nephew quite prophetically says she's going the right way to getting bumped off. One night, Emily trips down the stairs. Luckily, she survives, but her relatives try to convince her that she tripped on a dog toy that Bob left at the top of the stairs. But thinking back on what she felt when she fell down the stairs, she knows that she was either tripped or pushed. So she decides to write to Poirot for help. She then dithers about actually sending the letter, and when the letter finally does arrive at Poirot's house, he finds that Emily Arundel is already dead, apparently from natural causes, but given what he already knows from the letter, he's not so sure about that. By now, I've read a fair amount of Agatha Christie, not nearly all of it, but somewhere around 30, so I'm getting a pretty good feel for what her books are like and kind of how I would rank them against each other. And I would say this one is somewhere in the middle. It's pretty good, pretty satisfying conclusion, but overall it's nothing particularly special by Christie standards. I also figured out one clue before Poirot explained it. It's not a kind of amazing deductive leap, but still I kind of feel like if I managed to figure out a clue, it's maybe not one of Christie's best clues. But yeah, overall it was still a fun read, good for Joy Reading June, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend this one particularly highly compared with some of the others. And my last read of the month was Titus Alone by Mervyn Peake. This is the third and final part of the Gormenghast series, at least the last one finished and published during Mervyn Peake's lifetime. It was originally published in 1959, and this was a buddy read. I read this with Laurie from Will to Read. Titus Alone follows Titus, the 77th Earl of Groan, as he leaves Gormenghast Castle, his ancestral home, and finds himself in this strange new world where nothing is quite how we expect it to be, and no one seems to have even heard of Gormenghast. Everything here is much more modern and high-tech than Titus is used to, and indeed much more so than we, the reader, would be expecting after those first two books. There are cars and aeroplanes and missiles and weapons of mass destruction, even seemingly some sort of robots and like automated like sphere drone spy camera things. It's all quite strange. Titus encounters a series of strange misfit characters, some of whom get on well with him, others less so. But yeah, this is kind of a coming-of-age story for Titus. He's just on the cusp of manhood, and this is about him kind of making his way into this wider world that he knows nothing of, and finding himself much more vulnerable than he would have been at Gormenghast, where, he's an earl. So this book is kind of about Titus having to decide between the safety and the familiarity of Gormenghast and the newness and the danger of this strange new world that he finds himself in. He yearns to go back to Gormenghast, but also kind of wants to strike out on his own. The second book ends with him leaving Gormenghast because he's sick of the place, and yeah, I'm not sure really how much he genuinely wants to go back home, but part of him also starts to doubt whether Gormenghast was ever real, because no one else that he encounters has even heard of it. So yeah, he kind of starts to doubt his own sanity. Titus Alone is strikingly different from the first two books in the series, not just in terms of setting and tone, but also like prose style and structure. Those first two books had very ornate prose, very long sentences, and very long chapters containing those sentences. This is a much more staccato book. There are over 100 very short chapters, sometimes, not even a full page for a chapter. And yeah, the prose is largely quite a lot simpler than the first two Gormenghast books. I found that it was kind of less evocative than those first two books. I didn't feel like it kind of painted the ornate picture, and it didn't sort of weave a spell on me the way that those first two books did, especially the very first book. And also, I just found the story less intriguing, less gripping. I didn't really understand many of the characters, who they were, what they wanted. And because of that, I found it kind of hard to care about any of it, which is a real shame considering how much I loved the first book especially. I enjoyed the second as well, but the first book was my favourite book of the year when I read it. So yeah, compared with that, this one for me was quite a letdown. And in the conversations that I had with Laurie when we were reading it together, she found that as well, I think. I think possibly even more so than I did. I still enjoyed it enough to get through it. I think at one point Laurie was kind of quite eager for it to be over. But yeah, I have to say I did find this book quite disappointing compared with the previous ones. I do think part of that might be, I know that Mervyn Peake had some real health struggles towards the end of his life. I think he came down with dementia that lasted for about the last 10 years of his life, as far as I'm aware. So that may have had some impact on the writing of this book. But at the same time, I do think that there was a conscious decision to completely break free of the confines of Gormenghast. I guess maybe he was finding Gormenghast Castle kind of claustrophobic, and it is claustrophobic. So I don't blame him. But it was a welcome claustrophobia. I've found those first two books so evocative and so spellbinding that this complete change of pace and style and tone and everything just feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere. And maybe if I were to reread it, now I know what to expect from this book, maybe I would kind of feel like I have a better handle on what he was going for, and maybe be more able to go along with what he was going for. But I don't really feel like rereading it, to be honest. I could happily reread the first two books and probably just reread them in isolation, because they do tell a fairly self-contained story. So yeah, this third book almost feels kind of unnecessary, which is a real shame. But maybe it would have been better if it was the start of a new sort of series of Titus's adventures, which I think he wanted to write but then wasn't able to. And there is a fourth book that I believe he started writing and then his widow finished it off years later. But yeah, I don't really feel like reading that either. So yeah, unfortunately, that was a bit of a letdown for the end of the month. And yeah, sorry to Laurie that we ended up with kind of a disappointing book as a buddy read, but hopefully we'll have better luck with the next one. My trusty TARDIS notebook has finally filled up, but I do have a new notebook, and according to my notes in here, I watched 4 films in June, of which 3 were new to me. The rewatch was My Darling Clementine, directed by John Ford in 1946. It was June on the Range last month, and I didn't feel like reading a Western, but I thought I would watch one just to kind of dip my toe in, as it were. And yeah, My Darling Clementine is an absolutely stunning Western. Just fantastic. It stars Henry Fonda as Wyatt Earp. I don't know much about Wyatt Earp, I'll have to say, but from what little I've gleaned, I don't think this is a very accurate depiction of the true story of Wyatt Earp, but as a work of fiction, it is just a fantastic film. All of the kind of Western cliches are correct and present. You've got the obligatory, I thought I told you to get out of town type scenes. And yeah, I do have to say there is a little bit of anti-Native American sentiment, but it's in one scene and it kind of doesn't really impact the rest of the plot. So it's uncomfortable, and I can understand if you don't want to watch that. But yeah, the rest of the film is so good. The cinematography is stunning. The acting is great. Yeah, I can't fault it really, apart from that one kind of racist fly in the ointment. And the new to me films, firstly there was An Autumn Afternoon, directed by Yasujiro Ozu in 1962. It was his final film, and it's kind of a remake of his earlier film Late Spring, just a different season, I guess. I mean, it's not a one-for-one remake. It is a different story, but it's just on a very similar theme to Late Spring. So if you were to watch one of those films, I would say watch Late Spring. But if you're as sold on Ozu as I am, then An Autumn Afternoon is still really wonderful. I also watched The Thing, the John Carpenter version from 1982. I am not traditionally a great watcher or reader of horror, but recently I've been kind of, reassessing that assumption about myself, because there are a few horror books and films that I count as among my favourites, so why don't I read or watch more horror? So yeah, I watched The Thing, and it was brilliant. Like, why did I wait so long to watch it? Incredibly tense, and the sort of the paranoia about, you know, who is the thing, or who's still human and who's not human anymore. Yeah, it was just incredibly gripping, and the special effects, the practical effects, oh my god, so horrifying, in a brilliant way. I mean, like when the dog opens up, but yeah, amazing. And the other film that I watched last month was another horror film, actually, Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, from 1992, directed by David Lynch. This is a prequel to the Twin Peaks TV series, and it follows the last days of Laura Palmer. And given that the start of Twin Peaks, the series, is investigating the murder of Laura Palmer, you kind of know somewhat how it's going to end. And yeah, it's a very, very strange film, which is possibly needless to say when it's a David Lynch film, but it is very unsettling, and also deeply, deeply sad. It's quite harrowing, really, but also in a very compassionate way. I thought it was beautifully handled, and yeah, it feels, for something that is so full of surreal imagery and kind of unsettling unreality, it feels very emotionally true. And yeah, I thought it was really wonderful. There's a few kind of narrative dead ends in the film, because I think he was planning on doing some sequels that didn't materialize at the time, but I have been told that Twin Peaks: The Return, the TV series, kind of season 3 of Twin Peaks, basically, does answer at least some of those questions, does sort of pick up some of those threads, and yeah, I'm making a start on that soon, so I'm going to find out. I also watched 30 TV episodes, of which 5 were new to me. The rewatches were 22 episodes of Twin Peaks, basically the entirety of season 2, which I watched, obviously, before I watched the film. I also watched 3 episodes of Star Trek in season 2, and then the new episodes were 3 of Game Changer from the new series, and the last 2 episodes of the latest season of Taskmaster. Music-wise, I listened to 56 albums in June, of which 9 were new to me. My most listened to artists were The Jesus Lizard with 4, Cardiacs and Gary Newman with 3 each, and Aphex Twin, Bella Bartok, Bob Dylan, Fred Frith, Horse Lords, McCluskey, and Judy Sill with 2 each. Although the Bob Dylan one was 2 discs of a double album, so does that count as 2? And actually, same with Aphex Twin. My highlights of the month were Sail Away by Randy Newman, which is just a fantastic album that it really runs the gamut from songs that make me grin like a lunatic and songs that make me blub. I would also highlight the first 3 albums by The Jesus Lizard. Those are Head, Goat and Liar. All of their albums have 4-letter titles, although none of them are fun. I also really enjoyed revisiting McCluskey Do Dallas by McCluskey from 2002. They're a fantastic Welsh hardcore punk band with really kind of funny, sarcastic, quite caustic lyrics. If you don't like swearing in your lyrics, then you probably want to give them a wide berth, considering this album has a track called Fuck This Band, including the line, "Fuck this band, because they swear too much." I also really enjoyed the new album by Horse Lords called Demand to be Taken to Heaven Alive. I enjoyed that one so much, actually, I played it twice. The bit at the end. So that's everything I read, watched and listened to in the month of June. I'd love to hear in the comments if you have any thoughts on the stuff that I have discussed in this video, or how long you've been waiting for me to acknowledge the fact that I've chopped off all my hair. Yes, I am officially in my supervillain era. Anyway, that's about it from me today. I hope you're having a lovely day, and I will see you when I see you.